Got a bit of a soft spot, huh?
Before Will Smith was cracking jokes with aliens and Tommy Lee Jones was wiping memories with a penlight, the phrase Men in Black already meant something very different to people in the UFO and paranormal world. We're not talking about witty agents or chasing aliens in cool cars. Well, that's the exciting part of the job description we've seen on screen. But in this video, we're talking about something much weirder and, frankly, a lot creepier. Decades before Hollywood gave sunglasses and fedoras, real-life witnesses started reporting encounters with mysterious men in dark suits who showed up out of nowhere. These guys didn't have name tags, but they somehow knew everything. Real people claimed that after they saw something strange in the sky or had a close encounter, these mysterious, sharp-dressed strangers would appear out of nowhere, warn them to keep quiet, and leave everyone more confused than intimidated. To put it subtly, their behavior was off and unsettling. The stories have been popping up since at least the 1950s, right around the time of the first major UFO crashes and flying saucer headlines. And while no one can agree on who these men actually are, the theories range from shady government operatives running secret cleanup jobs to something far more out there, something not even from here. And the more you read, the more you're curious. So forget the Hollywood version. This video is about the real-world Men in Black, the ones who make you double-check your locks and wonder if your weird dream last night wasn't a dream after all.
Hang on.
Oops.
Origins of the Men in Black myth. Before Hollywood gave them all the swag we know the Men in Black for, strange men were already making the rounds in real-life UFO folklore. Only back then, nobody mistook them for charming secret agents who could make you chuckle. Instead, these were the kind of visitors who showed up uninvited and asked way too many questions. They made it clear that talking about what you saw was not actually what you saw, and made sure you knew that talking about it was a bad idea. The first known case that put them on the map goes back to 1947, the same year the modern UFO craze began with Kenneth Arnold's flying saucer sighting and the whole Roswell circus, where, allegedly, an alien spaceship crashed. But over in Puget Sound, Washington, a man named Harold Dahl had his own bizarre encounter. He claimed he saw a fleet of donut-shaped craft hovering above the water, dumping molten metal over the water. It killed his dog and injured his son. Already weird. But things got worse the next day, when a man in a black suit approached him at a diner, sat him down, and described Dahl's encounter in chilling detail before warning him not to talk about it. Dahl said the guy somehow knew everything that had happened without being told. And this was before Twitter. Imagine. In 1956, a book called They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers took that story and blew it up. It published first-hand accounts of people who'd had weird, intimidating run-ins after seeing UFOs. The book even talked about a guy named Albert K. Bender. He was a regular dude with a deep obsession for flying saucers and was one of the first to try making sense of all these strange sightings. In 1953, he ran a group called the International Flying Saucer Bureau, which sounds way fancier than it was. The IFSB had a small but passionate bunch of members, and Bender ran their tiny publication, Space Review, out of his attic in Connecticut. His magazine didn't have a huge reach, but it mattered to the people who read it. These UFO enthusiasts truly believed they were uncovering something massive, secrets that the rest of the world couldn't handle. Bender, in particular, was obsessed. And then, out of nowhere, he suddenly quit. The IFSB shut down completely. Naturally, people freaked out. Bender's followers wanted answers, but when they tried to press him for the real story, he either dodged their questions or gave cryptic, vague replies. Then one day, Bender told a local paper that 3 men in black suits had shown up and told him to shut it all down. He said they didn't threaten him with guns, but gave him migraines and messed with his head. They communicated with him telepathically and basically told him to shut it down. This left Albert scared stiff and so shaken he couldn't eat for days. He said he started getting these pounding headaches, the memory gaps, and a strange, pungent smell in the house. He didn't say who they were or what they represented, only that they were intense. When he wrote about it later, he didn't sound like a guy spinning a yarn, but someone who had stared into something deeply weird and deeply wrong. What makes this story different from typical conspiracy fluff is that Bender didn't capitalize on it. He did not go on tour or cash in. He went quiet, and the quiet made it feel even more legit. People started connecting dots, even if they weren't there. Maybe the MIBs were the government, maybe they were aliens, or maybe they were something else entirely. Either way, Bender's story gave the myth its first real legs. Then there's John Keel. If you've ever read the Mothman prophecies, you'd probably know Keel didn't mess around with his investigations. He cataloged dozens of MIB appearances, always appearing after UFO sightings, asking strange questions in halting speech, sometimes mispronouncing simple words like they had never said them out loud before. Now here's where the Men in Black lore takes a turn straight into the uncanny. There have been stories where witnesses claim the MIBs didn't come as anonymous agents. They came disguised as people the witness already knew. One of the most bizarre examples of this came from none other than John Keel himself. He said that at one point, people actually thought he had been replaced. Word spread among contactees that the real John Keel had been snatched by a UFO, and that the guy walking around with his name and face was a lookalike. What made this worse was people who had worked with him, who had his letters and met him before, started getting suspicious. They began comparing signatures, checking his tone, measuring the way he wrote now versus back then. That's how far the paranoia went. And it wasn't just the fringe believers whispering about it. Some of his more grounded contacts admitted they double-checked, not because they wanted to believe the madness, but because the weirdness surrounding these MIB stories had made even the most rational folks start second-guessing reality. If they could copy a face that well, then who's safe? Who is real? And who has been quietly replaced? It spooked the community bad. After that, the Men in Black became folklore fuel. From New Jersey to New Mexico, stories started popping up of silent, pale-faced men showing up at people's homes, telling them to forget what they saw. Sometimes they looked human, sometimes not really. So who were they? That's the thing. Nobody really knows. But the Men in Black were certainly not born in a movie script. Something too strange to ignore, too weird to explain, and way too unsettling to laugh off. And unlike their movie counterparts, they didn't carry memory-wiping tech. They brought something worse, the kind of encounter you don't want to remember but can't forget. Are they government agents? Now, the most rational explanation, and perhaps least satisfying, is that the Men in Black are exactly what they appear to be: highly classified government agents, part of some deep black program way off the books. Maybe tied to secret programs like Project Blue Book, the real U.S. Air Force program that ran from 1952 to 1969 and investigated thousands of UFO reports. Most were chalked up to things like swamp gas or weather balloons, but a handful remained unexplained. According to believers, whenever a sighting got too spicy, too credible, too "this might actually be a flying saucer," the MIB would show up. For those who dig deeper into government shady departments, there's the OSI, the Office of Special Investigations, which does exist, but probably doesn't issue mind-wipe pens. The kind of guys who clean up after UFO sightings, confiscate footage, and make sure grandma down the street mistook a flying umbrella for an alien spaceship in the cornfield. Now, is the OSI responsible for showing up at random hours and asking why the sheep are circling in groups? Probably not. But believers insist there is a secret elite cell buried within the OSI, one so classified it doesn't even brief the president. When these strangers stand by your door, one thing you can be certain of is that they aren't knocking for tea. Witnesses have reported them stepping out of old-school black Cadillacs that seem to shimmer out of thin air. Glossy, spotless, and suspiciously quiet. These cars sometimes vanish the second a witness looks away and is never seen on the road again. In some cases, they've been spotted in black unmarked helicopters, the kind that hover with zero sound and disappear in a flash. Either way, they never fly coach. Many say these black-suited visitors come with veiled threats, subtle or not so subtle intimidation, and the warning that you should probably burn burn those notes and forget what you saw. Some report being warned to stop investigating. Others describe weird side effects like headaches, memory fog, and even weird electrical disturbances when the MIB showed up. One poor guy said the MIB made his coffee taste metallic. That's some spooky shit. But it's the behavior that throws a wrench in the whole government spook theory. If these guys really are feds, they are spectacularly failing at being the most basic FBI agents. For starters, most don't carry badges. Some can't provide names and often show up in pairs like Jehovah's Witnesses, knock politely, and then proceed to interrogate witnesses and ultimately intimidate them to drop their futile pursuits of chasing UFOs and everything strange. Even if people who want to believe these guys are government agents admit there is something seriously peculiar about them, they talk in stilted, outdated slang and come across as someone trying too hard to pretend they were human and almost, but not quite pulling it off. People say they speak in overly formal sentences, pause too long between words, and occasionally forget basic phrases altogether. One witness said the man's accent was British, but not any kind of British I've ever heard. Like a computer imitating a BBC radio host from the 1950s. Witnesses said they moved in slow, clunky ways and didn't seem to grasp simple things. One reportedly tried to drink Jell-O with a straw. Others didn't seem to understand what a pen was. Another asked a man what his dog was and whether it could speak. And I am definitely not making this up. It's 100% legit. Look it up on the internet if you don't believe me. While these strange men weren't threatening in the typical sense, their unsettling and eerie presence was enough to leave people reeling and scared. As for their looks, they always wore black suits, dark shades, fedoras on their head, always looking like they walked straight out of a funeral. But the shades weren't just for style. Witnesses say they wore them to hide their eyes, which apparently glowed. Most of these guys were short, thin, and had a look people back then often described as exotic or foreign. They often have weird skin tones and appear pale, waxy, and almost artificial. One woman said they looked like mannequins dressed in church clothes. Some witnesses claim their mouths looked like they were drawn on, or that they never blinked. That's a bad sign. And when they're done, they evaporate. Because you look away for a second, and the car's gone, the hallway's empty, and you're left standing there wondering if any of it actually happened. So maybe they are with some classified intelligence, or maybe, and hear me out, they are the cover-up. Something wearing the idea of a government agent badly. A costume that looks right from far away, but falls apart up close. Because whatever they are not handing out business cards. They're not part of some department you can Google, and they're definitely not filling expense reports for all those creepy late-night home visits. This begs the question, if they are not human, are they learning how to be? Alien androids or interdimensional beings. So we've talked about how the Men in Black might be secret government agents, but there is this other theory. Well, several actually. And for a moment, let's say, for a moment, that the Men in Black aren't some secret government cleanup crew. Because a lot of people who've actually seen these guys in action, eyewitnesses, UFO researchers, even the occasional unfortunate postal worker, don't think they were even human. And frankly, if the reports are anything to go by, it weirdly makes more sense here than in any classified ops explanation. Sure, they wear tailored human suits and classy fedoras, but the software running inside seems buggy. I mean, these fellas are pretty lousy at acting to be human, which brings us to the case of Dr. Herbert Hopkins. In 1976, Hopkins was researching a UFO case in Maine. One evening, he's alone at home when the phone rings. A voice, flat and emotionless, from the other end asks if it can visit to discuss his research. Hopkins agreed. But before Hopkins can even hang up the phone, there is a knock at the door. Not even 5 minutes later, Hopkins finds a guy standing at his door, but he didn't see a car or hear an engine. No way someone could have made it from any payphone in the area to his house that fast. Still, Hopkins let the man in. The guy was pale, with no facial hair, no eyebrows or lashes. He was dressed in a black suit, bald, and his lips painted red. At one point, the man brushed his glove against his mouth, and Hopkins noticed a smear of red on the suede. Lipstick, maybe, maybe not. But that wasn't even the creepy part. When Hopkins looked closer, the man didn't seem to have lips. There was only a slit where a mouth should be, and the lipstick looked like it was there to fake a normal mouth. The visitor then tells Hopkins that he has 2 coins in his pocket. To Hopkins' surprise, it was true. The stranger directed Hopkins to take a coin out of his pocket and watch it. According to Hopkins, the coin shimmered, blurred, and suddenly vanished. The man then shifted the conversation toward the famous 1961 alien abduction case of Barney and Betty Hill. He then asked if Hopkins knew how Barney Hill had died. Hopkins, caught off guard but trying to stay calm, said what most people knew. Barney died of a heart attack. But that answer didn't sit right with the visitor. The man told Hopkins that Barney didn't die of a heart attack. According to him, Barney died because he didn't have a heart. The MIB then warned him to stop his research, and without spelling it out, that Hopkins could end up like Barney Hill if he didn't walk away from the case. The visit ended in the most bizarre manner. The man stood up slowly. His speech started dragging, and one word at a time said, "My energy is running low," whatever that means. He turned, walked stiffly to the front steps, held the railing like he was about to collapse, and disappeared. When his family got home, they found Hopkins rattled. He later mentioned, although he didn't think much of it at the time, his dog, a collie German Shepherd mix, ran into another room and hid in the closet the moment the man stepped inside Hopkins' home. Hopkins, fearing for his life, did what was asked of him. He destroyed the tapes and burned the notes. And while he later regretted it, he never went back to UFO hunting. No one ever figured out who the man really was. But human or not, it convinced Hopkins to drop everything. Years later, Hopkins said he believed the stranger wasn't from here, not from another country or a government agency, from somewhere else entirely. That's the only thing that made any sense to him. That's when people started asking, are these guys alien-made androids? Think about it. You're an advanced extraterrestrial race monitoring Earth, and you want to keep the locals from digging into your business. You would not send Marvin the Martian. You would build something that looks human enough not to raise eyebrows. Maybe they're designed to do damage control after a UFO sighting, or erase memories, or harvest evidence. Or are we dealing with something even stranger? The possibilities are endless. And if they are actually androids, that would explain a lot. But whatever their job is, subtlety is clearly not their strong suit. However, there are some researchers, and let's be honest, some pretty shaken up witnesses, who think the men in black aren't aliens or humans at all. They are interdimensional entities, beings from a parallel reality, bleeding into ours whenever someone gets too close to uncovering the truth. There's a strange overlap with poltergeist and shadow people reports. You know, the flickering lights, the air turns heavy, and people feel sick. Sometimes people who meet an MIB say they vanish into thin air. So who actually are these strange men? Are they alien androids watching Earth's development? Or glitchy visitors from a dimension that barely overlaps ours? Nobody knows for sure. But regardless of who they are, they don't seem like the kind of thing you would want to meet in a diner or your living room. Modern sightings and surveillance era MIB. You'd think in the age of smartphones, doorbell cams, and TikTok UFO experts, the men in black would have either been exposed or politely retired from their strange career. Because, well, everyone now has high-res cameras in their pockets. But nope, if anything, they have evolved. They are now smarter and way scarier, and somehow more camera-shy and camera-aware at the same time. Take 2008, for example. A hotel near Niagara Falls had a staff member who claimed he saw a UFO a few nights before. The next day, 2 very tall, very bald men in black suits walked through the hotel lobby and asked about him. They were identical. Same height, same build, no eyebrows, no hair, and no facial expressions. Witnesses described them as stiff, almost mechanical. Staff said the pair asked strange questions about the witness and seemed confused by basic human behavior. It was so eerie that some employees refused to come back to work for days. And yes, all of this is on tape, and the security footage exists. You would expect that to be a one-off, but it's not. As tech evolves, so do the stories. Sightings haven't stopped. People now claim their footage of UFOs gets mysteriously deleted. Surveillance systems glitch only around the time of an incident. One man said his Ring camera caught something unexplainable, but when he tried to replay the footage, the entire day had vanished from the timeline. Another woman said she received a phone call with no number, just static, and a voice that whispered, "You saw nothing." Today's men in black don't always knock on doors. They glitch into phone calls. They show up in dreams. Some people report getting cryptic emails or messages after researching UFOs. Others claim their phones started acting strange after a sighting. There's even chatter about MIB showing up in VR experiences, or being seen during sleep paralysis episodes, like some kind of interdimensional spyware that can now access your subconscious. Whatever they are, the men in black seem to be adapting. Maybe they are aliens. Maybe they are projections of our collective anxiety about being watched or punished for knowing too much. Or maybe they are the same thing they have always been, something ancient, masked in a disguise we are paranoid enough to believe in. In a world full of surveillance, maybe the men in black never needed to hide from cameras. Maybe they are the ones watching the watchers. Marvelous verdict. To bring this video to you, and having read more than a few stories on the internet, had made the hairs on my neck stand up. These real men in black are nothing like the ones from the movies. I mean, the movie versions are cool. This one is straight up creepy. When I first started researching them, I thought this would be a fun rabbit hole. And yeah, parts of it were fun, if your idea of fun includes men with no eyebrows asking farmers what color the cows were before the light came down. But the more I read, the harder it was to write them off as folklore. They have been discussed for decades, and while the details change, the weirdness stays consistent. And it still doesn't make sense. I wish I had an answer. All I know is that they weren't normal or friendly. The real men in black left behind more questions than answers. And maybe that's what makes the real men in black so unnerving. Not what we know about them, but what we don't. And after everything I've read, I've started looking twice at people in black suits who walk a little too quietly or stare a little too long. I haven't seen one yet, but if a couple of tall guys in black suits show up at your door and start asking if you've seen lights in the sky, it might be a good time to say no, hand over your Jell-O, and pretend you are into weather balloons now.